Welcome to Little English Studio, where English learning meets the inspiring stories of the world's greatest people. Here, we tell powerful life journeys in clear and simple English, so you can improve your English while discovering lessons of adventure, courage, and discovery. Today, we bring you the incredible story of Marco Polo, the man whose journey to Asia changed the way the world saw itself. His story is one of exploration, survival, friendship, and the power of sharing knowledge. Marco Polo was born in 1254 in Venice, one of the richest and busiest cities in medieval Europe. Venice was not just a city, it was a global trading hub where merchants, sailors, and adventurers came from every corner of the known world. Marco's family belonged to this world of trade. His father, Niccolo Polo, and uncle, Maffei Polo, were successful merchants who often travelled far for business, but Marco's childhood was not easy. His mother died when he was young, and he was raised mostly by relatives. Even so, he grew up surrounded by the sights and sounds of Venice's markets, spices from the east, silks from China, stories of faraway lands. This atmosphere planted in him a curiosity about the wider world. To understand Marco Polo's story, we need to imagine the 13th century. Europe was slowly recovering from centuries of wars and plagues. Most Europeans never travelled far from their villages. To them, Asia was a mysterious land, full of myths, riches, and unknown dangers. At the same time, the Mongol Empire was at its height. Led by Genghis Khan and later his descendants, the Mongols created the largest land empire in history. Their rule stretched from China to Eastern Europe. This empire, brutal in its wars but open to trade, created something new. The Silk Road became safer than ever before, and it was this moment in history that allowed Marco Polo's journey to become possible. In 1271, when Marco was only 17, his father and uncle returned from one of their long trips to the east. They had travelled to the court of Kublai Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan who ruled China. Kublai Khan had given them a request: return with educated men and holy oil from Jerusalem, so Niccolo and Maffei prepared another journey. This time they took Marco with them. The journey was long and dangerous. The Polo family travelled by ship to the Middle East, then crossed deserts, mountains, and vast plains. They passed through Armenia, Persia, and Central Asia, sometimes facing bandits, storms, or hunger. But Marco was not just surviving. He was observing. He kept notes in his mind, learning languages, studying cultures, and memorizing details. He was like a sponge, absorbing everything he saw. After more than 3 years of travel, the Polos finally reached the magnificent court of Kublai Khan in Cambaluc, modern-day Beijing. Marco was amazed. He saw a city far bigger and richer than any in Europe. There were paved roads, canals, paper money, postal stations, and huge palaces decorated with gold and silk. Kublai Khan welcomed the Polos warmly. The Mongol ruler was fascinated by foreigners who could bring knowledge of distant lands. Marco, with his sharp mind and curiosity, quickly won the Khan's trust. Marco Polo spent 17 years in the service of Kublai Khan. He travelled widely across China and beyond, sometimes as an envoy, sometimes as a governor. He claimed to have visited places such as Yunnan near Burma, Tibet and the Himalayas, Mongolia and Central Asia, coastal cities along the South China Sea. Marco described the wonders of the East, the use of paper money long before it appeared in Europe, the burning of coal for heat, the complex system of canals and ships, exotic animals like elephants and rhinos, the richness of spices, silks and precious stones. He also wrote about customs, festivals, marriages, armies and religions. Some of his accounts sounded unbelievable to Europeans of his time. Eventually, the Polos wanted to return to Venice. Kublai Khan was reluctant to let them go, but in 1292 he finally agreed. He asked them to escort a Mongol princess to Persia for marriage. The journey back was as dangerous as the first. They travelled by sea, facing storms and disease. Many in their group died, but after 2 years the Polos finally returned to Venice in 1295, 24 years after they had left. When Marco Polo returned, Venice was at war with Genoa. Soon after, Marco was captured during a naval battle and thrown into prison. It was here, in prison, that Marco Polo told his stories to a fellow prisoner, Rustichello de Pisa, a writer of romances. Rustichello wrote them down, and the result was a book that would become famous. The Travels of Marco Polo. This book described Asia in ways Europeans had never heard before. It spoke of the wealth of China, the greatness of Kublai Khan, the riches of India, and the wonders of the East. For some, the stories were unbelievable: cities larger than Paris, roads filled with traders, palaces covered in gold. Some called him the man of a million lies. But for others, the book was an inspiration. It spread across Europe, translated into many languages, and influenced generations of explorers. Marco Polo lived the rest of his life in Venice, where he died in 1324, but his story did not end there. His book became one of the most important travel accounts in history. It shaped Europe's understanding of Asia for centuries. It inspired explorers like Christopher Columbus, who carried a copy on his voyage to the New World. Marco Polo's life was not just about travel. It was about curiosity, courage, and the power of sharing knowledge. He showed that the world was much bigger, richer, and more connected than people thought. Lessons from Marco Polo: curiosity opens the world. Marco Polo's success came from his desire to learn and observe. Bravery creates opportunities. Few would risk deserts, mountains, and oceans, but Marco did. Stories have power. By sharing his experiences, Marco Polo changed history. Marco Polo was more than a traveler. He was a bridge between East and West, a storyteller who opened the eyes of Europe to the wonders of Asia. His life reminds us that the world is full of mysteries waiting to be explored, and that sometimes the most powerful journey is not just across the earth, but across the minds of people. This is the story of Marco Polo, the boy from Venice who showed the world how big it truly is.